So, hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Jancar show. Today, we're going to talk about something that's probably making your breakup recovery a living hell without you even realizing it. And it's what the philosopher Alan Watts calls the backwards law. And it's this fascinating paradox where the harder you try to feel good after a breakup, the worse you actually begin to feel. And think about it. Like you're scrolling through Instagram, let's say, you're trying to convince yourself that you're having a great time. You're repeating positive affirmations in the mirror like, I'm over them, when you're clearly not. You are desperately trying to be happy when you're just fucking miserable inside. And the more you do this stuff, the more miserable you become. Now, this is all completely backwards, and it's why most breakup advice fails spectacularly. Because most of this advice, it centers around fighting your negative feelings, whether it's through distraction, denial, or delusional positive thinking. Over the next few segments in this little podcast episode, I'm gonna try and break down why this approach is making your recovery take way longer than it should, and what you should do instead. And look, like I've been there before myself, trying to outrun the pain, trying to force myself to just get over my breakup, and I can tell you firsthand that it doesn't work. What does work is pretty much the exact opposite of what your instincts are telling you to do right now. That's why breakup recovery can be sometimes very difficult. Now, this episode is for people who are just tired of being told to be positive or focus on yourself without any concrete explanation of what that actually means or how to do it when you feel like your life is perhaps falling apart. So let's dive into why your attempts to feel better are actually making you worse and what you can do about it. So just a quick plug before we move forward. If you'd like to go deeper into my work, if you'd like over 40 different tips and pieces of advice on healing and growing from a breakup, you should download my free recovery cheat sheet, available by going to maxjancar.com/recover or by going into the description of this podcast episode or video, depending on which platform you're tuning in, and just clicking the link in that description to be taken to the download page. So grab that free resource. It took me a long time to make it, really proud of it, and I think it's going to be super duper useful for you. With that out of the way, thanks for listening to my little plug, my little promo segment, and let's go on with the program. So let's start off with our first segment, problem solution, and let's get right into the heart of the problem for a start. Right now, if you're like most people going for a breakup, you're probably doing everything in your power to feel better. And that, well, it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, you're in pain, so naturally you want that pain to stop. But here's where things get a bit more interesting. And frustrating also, mind you. All those logical things that you're doing to feel better, they're actually making you feel worse. Probably. Like, this is my guess, but it's usually, I'm usually right when it comes to most people about this specific issue. So it's not just like my opinion, it's a really well-researched common psychological phenomena that plays out over and over again in breakup recovery. So let me break down for a start the 4 ways people try to fix their post-breakup pain and why each approach tends to backfire, sometimes spectacularly. First, there is active avoidance. Now this is when you're doing everything possible to avoid reminders of your ex. You're deleting photos, you're blocking them on social media, you're taking different routes to avoid places that might trigger memories of them, of your dead relationship. You're basically doing no contact and then some. You're essentially trying to erase this person from your life, at least temporarily, in hopes that out of sight means truly out of mind. Now, while this is by itself perfectly sound and reasonable, and it does work in speeding up breakup recovery, sure, I admit that it's very true, but what many people forget is the other side of the coin. Once you pursue some degree of avoidance, you've gotta deal with your feelings about that avoidance. You've got to process them in some way, or else they're just gonna grow and fester, grow stronger, that is, and then you'll actually think about your ex more, not less. Now, I had a client named James once who took this sort of careless avoidance like to the extreme, and I want to quickly highlight his example, right? His story. He essentially moved to a different city, he changed his phone number, and even adopted a new hobby just because his ex was into his old one. And about 6 months later, he was still just as hung up on her as on day one. All because geographic distance, for one, doesn't equal emotional distance. And it wasn't until this guy got into therapy, journaling, and meditation that his mental health actually improved. And why that is? Well, because those methods got him to actually think deeply, then write out and talk about what he's feeling and going through, and in doing so, he was able to process his emotions. The second approach to fixing that post-breakup pain that I see constantly is forced positive thinking. This is the good vibes only approach to breakup recovery, to put it in other words. So it's telling yourself and thinking things like, I'm better off without them, or this is a blessing in disguise, or everything happens for a reason, or I'm awesome, I don't even need them in the first place, nor want them. Well, you clearly do. Now, I'm not against optimism, just to be really clear about this. But there is a massive difference between authentic optimism that emerges naturally and this performative positivity that's essentially emotional gaslighting. Because when you force yourself, emphasis on force yourself, to focus only on the positive aspects of your breakup while your heart is breaking, well, you're invalidating your own entire experience. It's like telling someone with a broken leg, at least you still can use your arms. Like, technically that's true, but not particularly helpful or even compassionate. And the thing about forced positivity is that it creates a secondary layer of suffering. So now you're not just hurting from the breakup, you're also feeling like a failure for hurting in the first place. So let me just point out here another client story, this time revolving around Sarah. It's another client of mine that actually spent weeks posting inspirational quotes about leveling up and thriving after leaving a toxic relationship on her Instagram. Meanwhile, she was calling me in tears almost weekly for our coaching sessions. She was completely devastated. So the disconnect between her public persona and the private reality was actually making her feel worse, not better. So my point is, don't repeat her mistake. Please, it was a tough thing to go through for this girl. So don't try to disconnect the two, public persona that is, and your physical, actual reality. Or else there could be hell to pay. So just like a word of warning. But anyway, to move along to our third approach, this is all about constant distraction from breakup pain. So think Netflix binges, mindless scrolling, drinking with friends, throwing yourself into work, jumping into the dating pool way too early, or getting lost in prostitutes, right? The goal here is to essentially keep yourself so busy that you don't have time to actually feel and deal with your pain, your breakup pain. Now, I'll say the logic seems sound here. If you don't want to think about something else instead. And I'll be the first to admit that distraction has its place in recovery. Yes, you've heard that right. Sometimes you do need a break from intense emotions. But when distraction becomes your primary coping strategy, well, at that point, you're essentially putting a band-aid on a wound that needs stitches. The bleeding might stop temporarily, but no real healing is happening. And the moment you slow down, maybe you're lying in bed at night or you have a quiet weekend, all those unprocessed feelings, they come flooding back, often, but not always, even stronger than before. Now, I remember personally when I went through a particularly painful breakup years back, when I was still like a bloody teenager. Good times, by the way. I scheduled every minute of my day for weeks, like work, gym, social events, dating apps, you name it, anything to keep my mind occupied. I thought I was handling my breakup well, obviously. That is until I caught a really bad cold and I had to spend an entire week alone in my home. So I was without all of my distractions, and so I completely fell apart. And that's when I realized I just hadn't been healing at all. I'd just been running away from pain. And I want to point this out that you don't want to get into this position, right? Don't repeat my mistake, is essentially what I'm saying. It's really that simple. Now, the fourth approach to dealing with pain, probably the most insidious one on our little list here, if we can call it that, is self-judgment about the recovery process itself. This is a interesting thing. This is when you're essentially telling yourself that you should be over the whole breakup by now, that you're taking too long to heal, and that there must be something batshit wrong with you for still feeling this way, for still feeling bad. So, for example, you say to yourself or think to yourself things like, it's been 3 months, why am I still thinking about them? My friend got over their breakup in a few weeks. Like, what's wrong with me? Why do I need months or even years, maybe? Or you start thinking and saying to yourself, I should be dating again right now, by now. And all these shoulds are completely arbitrary expectations that have nothing to do with your unique emotional process. Look, the thing is, recovery isn't linear, and it doesn't follow some preset timeline, some strictly like predetermined pattern. Some people, they take weeks, others take years, and a host of factors influence how long it takes for you to like get over the whole thing, to move on. The length of the relationship, the circumstances of your breakup. So was it messy, amicable, or was it done through text, a phone call? Was this a long distance relationship? Then there's like your attachment style and your ex's attachment style that we need to take into consideration, your support system, and so much more. Like, when you judge yourself for not healing fast enough, you are adding just unnecessary pressure to an already difficult situation. It's like having a broken bone and getting angry at yourself because it's not healing on the schedule you prefer. Like, your body and mind have their own healing timeline, and fighting against that timeline, well, as you'd expect, it only prolongs the breakup recovery process. So these are the 4 ways, 4 at least main ways people try to feel better after a breakup: careless avoidance, forced positivity, constant distraction, and self-judgment. And they all stem from the same flawed assumption that negative emotions are something you need to fight against, to avoid, or overcome as quickly as possible. But here's where the backwards law comes in. The desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience, and paradoxically, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. Like, this isn't just some philosophical mumbo jumbo. Believe me, it's not. It's a practical reality that plays out in just about every breakup recovery scenario every single fucking day. The harder you try to feel good, the worse you feel. And when you finally give yourself permission to just feel bad, to feel like shit, you often start to feel better. Not immediately, mind you, but eventually. and in a much more sustainable way. So, what does this mean practically? How do you apply the backwards law to your breakup recovery? Well, let me break down 5 solutions that might work. They are counterintuitive, they might seem as though they kind of are, but they're actually very effective, very useful approaches to take. So let me go through them right now. Let me list them out for you and kind of describe them, okay? Solution number 1, stop trying to avoid pain and instead start accepting it. Now, this isn't about wallowing in misery or glorifying suffering. No, it's about acknowledging that pain is natural, a natural part that is a necessary, actually, a necessary and natural part of healing, of the healing process. And when you resist emotional pain, you actually amplify it and extend its duration. So instead of doing all of that, try just sitting with your feelings for a few minutes each day without judgment. Like, find a quiet place, close your eyes, and simply notice what emotions are present. Say to yourself, I feel like shit right now, and that's okay. If you feel like that, that is. Don't try to change it, don't try to fix it, just try to acknowledge it. Now, you might be surprised to discover that when you stop fighting against your emotions, they become less overwhelming. It's kind of like quicksand. That's the metaphor I tend to use here. The more you struggle, the faster you sink. But if you relax and you spread out your weight, you can avoid being pulled under. Now, as for solution 2, it's all about replacing forced positivity with radical honesty. So instead of, I'm so happy we broke up, saying that to yourself or thinking that, just try, hey, this fucking hurts and I'm struggling right now. I mean, the relief that comes with honesty like that is immediate and powerful. So really try it out when you get a chance. And no, this doesn't mean you should be negative for the sake of being negative. That's not what we're doing here. It just means being truthful about your current emotional state. So how you feel both with yourself and even with, your trusted peers, friends, family members, other people. And when you stop performing happiness that you don't feel, you free up enormous amounts of psychological energy that then can be redirected toward actual healing and, more specifically, activities that promote it. So, again, start by being honest with yourself. So if you catch yourself thinking, I should be grateful for this breakup because it taught me so much or some specific lesson, but you're not actually feeling grateful, acknowledge the disparity. Acknowledge that, yes, there might be a lesson in there that you will discover eventually and that you will be grateful for, but right now, you just feel like shit, it hurts, you're angry, you're pissed off, and that's where you are. That's where I am. That's kind of like what you should be telling yourself. Then try to be honest with one trusted friend or a family member. Obviously, don't need to go and, dump your raw emotions onto everyone in your life, but having at least one person there with whom you can be completely authentic is incredibly valuable. Now, as for solution number 3, use distraction strategically, not constantly. So there's nothing wrong with taking a break from your pain, but recognize that's all you're doing, taking a break, not solving anything. Distraction becomes problematic when it's like your only coping strategy, your primary or only coping strategy. So instead of constant distraction, just try scheduled distraction. Set aside specific time to feel your emotions. Then, a specific time to engage in activities that take your mind off your emotions and how things are. And this is a way more balanced approach that will help you heal faster and not let you get overwhelmed by your rumination and emotions and all those icky psycho stuff. So, for example, you might decide that from 7 to 7:30 p.m. each evening, you're gonna journal about your feelings about the breakup, or you're gonna meditate, right? Or you're gonna go on a walk and just talk to yourself about these things. And during that time, you're gonna allow yourself to fully experience whatever emotions come up. But then, from 7:30 to like 9 p.m., you make a deal with yourself. You're gonna engage in an activity that you enjoy, like watching a movie, calling a friend, working on a hobby, flossing your cat, whatever. Like this structure should give you both the space to process and the relief of temporary escape without letting either approach dominate your recovery. Moving on to solution number 4, it's all about dropping that timeline. So I'm essentially saying that there is no schedule for healing. Some people take weeks, others take years, and a multitude of factors influence the duration, including, like I said, the length and the type of the relationship, your circumstances, attachment style, support system, yada yada yada. And the more you pressure yourself to just be over it, the more you're reinforcing the idea that your natural emotional process is somehow wrong or broken. And this judgment becomes yet another layer of suffering on top of the breakup itself. It's like meta emotions. Feel bad about a breakup or about something revolving around a breakup, and then you feel bad about feeling bad about whatever that other thing was, right? And then you feel bad about feeling bad about that other thing you feel bad about, and it's like this never-ending cycle. And yeah, it's not fun to be locked in it. So instead of asking yourself, to give you kind of a more practical tip, why am I not over this yet? Try instead asking yourself, what does my mind and heart need right now to continue healing? Like this shifts your focus from an arbitrary timeline, which, as I said, is different for everyone, almost, to your actual needs in the present moment. Now, solution 5 is to redefine what healing looks like for you. So, healing isn't about never feeling sad about a breakup again. It's about integrating that experience into your life in a way that doesn't dominate your thoughts or your emotions. So, you might always feel something when you think about your ex, whether it's good or bad, or a mix of both. And that's completely normal. Many people have this idea that they'll know that they're healed when they never think about their ex anymore, or when they can think about them with complete neutrality and like detachment. But it's not how humans' emotions or even memory work. Instead, healing looks like being able to think about your ex without spiraling into intense emotional pain. It looks like being able to acknowledge the good and the bad aspects of the relationship with clarity, perspective, and like fairness, right? It's not all their fault, and it's also not all your fault. It looks like being open to new connections without constantly comparing them to your past. Now, here's what all these solutions, if you perhaps noticed, have in common. They are about letting go of control. The harder you try to control your emotional experience post-breakup, the more it actually controls you. And it's only when you surrender to the process, when you accept that healing is messy, non-linear, and painful as shit, it's at that point that you actually open up the doors to real healing. So if you can take one thing away from this segment, let it be this: stop trying so damn hard to feel better. Chillax more. Give yourself permission to feel exactly how you feel right now. And that's, your first step. This could be your first step to actual healing. Okay, so let's dive into our next segment, the breakthrough idea. So here's this one. Here's one for this episode. Something that goes against almost everything our culture teaches us about emotional health, especially after a breakup. So here it is. Happiness is not the goal of breakup recovery. I'll say that again. Happiness should not be your goal right now. Now, this probably sounds fucking ridiculous, at least at first. Like, after all, isn't the whole point of recovery to feel happy again? Isn't that why you're reading breakup recovery books or self-help books, digesting podcasts like this one, maybe even seeing a therapist or a coach or whatnot, to get back to, feeling good? But this obsession with happiness is precisely what's keeping you stuck in suffering. And not just you, Like, I see this pattern with almost every person I work with. Let me explain why this matters so much. So, to kind of give some context here, our entire culture is built around this magnificent pursuit of happiness. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that if we're not happy, we're somehow failing at life. I mean, that's why you see entire book sections in bookstores on the topic of happiness, right? And this, in my opinion, is kind of toxic positivity when you're trying to force yourself to be fucking happy all the damn time. Even not when you force yourself, just when you strive to be happy all the damn time. And this toxic positivity is everywhere. And it's especially prevalent in the breakup advice space. Now, the problem is when you make happiness your goal after a breakup, it creates an impossible standard that sets you up for constant disappointment. Every moment you're not feeling happy suddenly becomes evidence, or gradually becomes evidence, that you're not healing properly, whatever the fuck that means, which makes you feel even worse. It's this vicious cycle that can keep you stuck for months or even years. I mean, think about it. Think about it like this. If someone you love dies, would you expect to be happy a month later? What about 6 months later? Would you beat yourself up for still feeling grief? Probably not. Most people, they understand that grief after a death is natural and takes time to process. Yet, when it comes to breakups, we have this bizarre expectation that we should bounce back quickly. It's just a breakup, we tell ourselves, right? People go through them all the damn time. I should probably be over this by now. But a breakup is a form of grief. You're grieving the loss of a relationship, a shared future, a part of your identity that was tied to being someone's partner. Like, this is a legit loss, and it deserves to be treated with the same respect, dare I say, we give to other forms of grief, like when a person dies. The breakthrough is realizing that a healthy emotional life isn't about maximizing happiness, it's about developing emotional resilience and depth. Think about it like this. If you only work out the muscles that feel good to work out, to strength train, you're gonna develop serious imbalances and weaknesses. And the same is true emotionally. If you allow yourself to feel the good emotions and avoid the bad ones, you're emotionally stunting yourself. The most emotionally resilient people that I know aren't the ones who are constantly happy and positive even. They're the ones who developed the capacity to feel the full spectrum of human emotions, including grief, anger, confusion, and, yes, obviously heartbreak, without being destroyed by them, without letting them lead to really bad outcomes like hurting someone, lashing out at someone, a good friend, unnecessarily, or hurting themselves. Like, I once worked with a client, let's call him Alex, who came to me about 6 months after a devastating breakup, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing everything right? I'm going to the gym, I'm spending time with friends, I even started dating again, but I still don't feel happy. So clearly, I'm doing something wrong." And when we dug deeper, it became clear that Alex was using all these ostensibly healthy activities as a way to chase happiness, joy, novelty even, rather than to process his grief. He was going to the gym not because he actually enjoyed it, but because exercise was supposed to release endorphins and make him feel better. He was not dating because he felt ready, but because being single made him uncomfortable and maybe even lonely a little bit. Like, his entire recovery was oriented around trying to feel good, and as a result, he wasn't actually recovering at all. So we shifted his focus from pursuing happiness to finding meaning instead, in his experience or experiences. So instead of asking, will this make me feel good? Will this make me feel joy and happiness? When it comes to like potential activities, he started asking, will this be meaningful for me? Does this feel important to me? Now, sometimes the answer was the same. Spending time with close friends was both enjoyable and meaningful, but often it was different. Sitting with his grief wasn't pleasant, but it was meaningful. Journaling about what he'd learned from the relationship wasn't always fun. In fact, it was rarely fun, but it gave the experience purpose. It felt important to do. Within a few weeks of this shift, Alex reported feeling way more at peace than he had been since the breakup. And not because he was suddenly happy all the time even, he wasn't, but because he was no longer beating himself up for not being happy. He essentially had given himself permission to have a more authentic experience. So what if instead of pursuing happiness after your breakup, you pursued meaning? What if instead of asking what will make me feel good now, you ask yourself what will make this experience meaningful for my life? Like when you shift from chasing happiness to creating meaning, usually everything changes. Suddenly your pain isn't just pointless suffering, it's actually teaching you something essential about yourself, about relationships, about what you value, who you are, what your standards are, what your personal values and boundaries are, stuff like that. And the paradox here, and this is where that backwards law comes in again, is that when you stop making happiness your goal and instead focus on finding meaning in your experience, happiness often shows up anyway, automatically, as like a byproduct rather than a direct pursuit or direct result. And this breakthrough idea is why so many people eventually look back on their worst breakups as turning points that led to tremendous personal growth. Not because they were happy while going through them. No, personal growth is, by definition, uncomfortable and painful, but because they found meaning in this experience. And here's one more thing I want you to know. Another kick in the stomach, I guess. This probably won't be your last heartbreak. Life involves pain, and no, that's not just pessimism, it's reality. The question isn't whether you'll experience more suffering in the future, but how you're gonna relate to that suffering when it comes. So when you learn to find meaning in pain rather than just trying to escape it and push it down, you develop an emotional skill set that no amount of toxic positivity can actually provide. You learn how to become someone who doesn't just survive life challenges, but grows through them. Think of it like post-traumatic growth, right? There's a lot of science backing up that whole theory. That's kind of what we're doing here. And ultimately, isn't that just like a more compelling goal than feeling happy all the time? So to become a deeper, more resilient, more authentic person, to create a life rich with meaning and purpose, even in, or especially in, the darkest moments? I don't know about you, man, but I believe it is. And if there's one gift you can take from your breakup, let it be maybe this shift in perspective. By the way, I teach about all of this and more in my book, Beat the Breakup. If you'd like to get this bad boy, my kind of flagship guidebook on breakup recovery, you can find a link to it below this video. Or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can find the link to this bad boy in the description below. That's it. Now let's go to our next segment, the Q&A segment, where I answer some of the most common questions that I get about this backwards approach to breakup recovery. And yes, these are real questions from real people going through exactly what you might be experiencing right now. So, first question, Max, I understand that forcing positivity isn't helping, but when I allow myself to feel bad, I feel like I'm going to spiral out of control and never come back. How do I feel my emotions without being consumed by them? So this is probably the most common concern that I hear when I talk about accepting any kind of negative emotions. There's this fear in people that if you open the floodgates, even a little bit, you'll drown in a tsunami of pain, to put it metaphorically. And I get that. I get it. When you've been holding back intense emotions for, let's say, weeks or for some people even months, the prospect of actually feeling them can be terrifying and is painful. But here's what's really important to understand. There's a massive difference between feeling your emotions and drowning in them. Feeling emotions means acknowledging their presence and allowing them to move through you. Drowning in them means completely identifying with them. So believing that you are your sadness, that you are your anger, that you are your grief, and you're gonna stay in those states for a long time, maybe even forever. So here's how to navigate this. Set boundaries with yourself. Try saying, I'm gonna feel this pain for the next 20 minutes, then set a timer. When the timer goes off, consciously shift to a different activity, and that's it. Like this will give you the safety of knowing that there's like an end point, while still allowing the emotion to be processed. Another mindful technique here is to practice mindful observation of your emotions. So instead of thinking, I am sad, try thinking, I notice sadness, or sadness is present right now. Like this small shift in language and how you talk to yourself, it creates a bit of distance that from the emotion that allows you to experience it without being consumed by it. And usually that makes people feel better for whatever reason. And also, like, just don't underestimate the power of physical movement. Emotions aren't just mental experiences, they have physical components as well. So going for a walk, doing some yoga, even like shaking your limbs a little bit, it can all help you process your emotions, or at least gets you to get unstuck from the current sad or panicky state you might be in. Anyhow, next question. It's been 3 months since my breakup, and my friends and family keep telling me I should be over it by now. How do I handle their expectations when I'm still struggling? Ah, yes, the timeline police. Look, these people, they probably mean well, but they can be incredibly damaging to your recovery process without a doubt when they say stuff like that, when they pressure you. So just first of all, understand that most people are just really uncomfortable with other people's pain. So that's what could be happening in your case. So when they tell you to like get over it, they're often really just saying your ongoing pain makes me uncomfortable, so just maybe stop showing it, please. Second, you don't owe anyone a performance of healing. You're allowed to take as long as you need. That said, if you are getting this feedback consistently, it might be worth considering whether you're actively working through your feelings or simply rehashing the same thoughts and feelings, without any real progress being made. That can also be something that kind of holds you back. So I hope I answered that adequately. Third question. I tried sitting with my negative feelings, but all it does is make me want to text my ex or check their social media. How do I stop these self-destructive impulses? So, important question. I like that you are aware these are bad impulses. They're self-destructive, as you said. This is an important question because I think it highlights like this big misconception people have about accepting emotions. That acceptance means acting on whatever impulse those emotions generate. And it absolutely does not mean that. Acceptance, so accepting that you, let's say, miss your ex, doesn't mean you should text them. Accepting that you're curious about their life doesn't mean you should stalk them on Instagram. This is where acceptance meets boundaries. You can accept your feelings without actually acting on them, without acting on every impulse they generate. So try this. When you feel the urge to reach out or check on your ex, say to yourself, hey, I am feeling the urge to text my ex right now, and that's normal, but I don't have to act on this urge at the moment. Then physically put your phone in another room, maybe set a 30-minute timer, and commit to not touching it until the timer goes off. And by then, the intensity of the urge will probably have decreased. At least that's what usually happens. I've also found it very helpful for the clients and just people I work with and talk to write the text they want to send to their ex in like a notes app or something or a journal instead of actually sending it. And this gives you the emotional release of expressing whatever you want to express without the potential consequences of actually reaching out to your ex. Another technique is to identify your triggers and have a plan for them. So if scrolling through social media before bed always leads to checking your ex's profile, maybe you need to put your phone away an hour before bedtime. If drinking makes you more likely to reach out, start avoiding alcohol until you've stopped healing. Like, remember, having the urge doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. The strength comes not from never feeling the urge, but from how you respond to it when it does hit you. Okay, fourth question. I understand intellectually that accepting negative emotions is healthier, but how do I stop myself from falling into toxic positivity when that's what our culture constantly promotes? So, pretty fantastic question because it acknowledges that we're on an uphill battle when we faced breakups and stuff like this. We're constantly swimming against a powerful cultural current that keeps pushing this good vibes only narrative and mentality. And it's no wonder so many people, so many of us, default to toxic positivity. My advice: become a detective of toxic positivity in your own mind. So start noticing when you're maybe forcing positive thinking. So maybe you are suddenly saying to yourself how special you are, how powerful you are, how everything happens for a reason, and this is what the universe wanted, and how special you are, and due to this specialness, you're going to beat this breakup in 30 days or less, or something like that. You know, be weary of stuff like that. Catch yourself when you're thinking along those lines. Don't judge yourself for it. Just try to catch yourself when you're thinking like that, and then, well, don't think like that. Try to be more realistic about your situation. Also, consider curating your social media and the content that you consume. So unfollow maybe accounts that push you anything revolving around unrealistic positivity. Unfollow influencers that promote the mentality, the lifestyle. Do a little digital detox. Maybe it's even better for you to do a digital detox for all self-improvement content in general, including stuff like this little podcast, right? Because a lot of the times what happens is that people keep consuming this shit and then they get addicted to it because it maybe alleviates their pain or something, makes them feel a little bit better, which, great, but, you can still get addicted to it. So maybe a full detox is also a good idea from all self-help breakup advice type material. Okay, fifth question. Since starting to accept my negative emotions, I've noticed I cry a lot more. Is this a sign I'm getting worse instead of better? So I get this one. A lot of people think that this process should make them feel good or at least feel better right away. But in reality, when you stop suppressing your emotions, they often flow more freely if you've been holding back tears, let's say, for weeks or months on end. And in that case, yes, you might cry way more frequently once you actually give yourself permission to feel that sadness. Now, this isn't a sign that you're getting worse or anything. It's a sign that you're just finally processing the emotions that were keeping you stuck. Okay, so last question. I've been trying to find meaning in my breakup, but all I keep coming back to is that I wasn't good enough. How do I find more positive meaning without falling into toxic positivity? So, okay, this one cuts right at the heart of the most painful aspect of breakups, the way they can trigger our deepest insecurities and feelings of unworthiness and inadequacy. So when I talk about finding meaning, I'm not suggesting you need to immediately see your breakup as this beautiful gift from the universe or whatever. That would be toxic positivity. Finding meaning is an evolving process that often starts with the painful stories we tell ourselves, like I wasn't good enough, and then gradually shifts toward a more nuanced understanding as we heal. The first step is to essentially challenge this core belief about not being good enough. So saying to yourself, like, or thinking, this isn't about forcing positivity, it's about examining why this sweeping conclusion is actually accurate. Now, relationships, they end for countless reasons: incompatibility, timing, personal growth, or just external circumstances. And even when someone leaves because they're unhappy with specific aspects of the relationship, that doesn't mean you as a whole, like whole person, are not good enough. So try to get more specific about what actually happened. Instead of, I wasn't good enough, maybe it's we had different communication styles that created ongoing conflict and they just couldn't deal with it anymore. Or let's say it was maybe my anxiety and neediness that pushed them away because, like, I wanted their attention all the time. Like, these are way more specific understandings that still acknowledge your role without condemning your entire being. So that's how you want to actually think about it. And from there, you can start to identify what these specific patterns might teach you and stuff like that. Not in a self-harming way, but in like a curious, growth-oriented kind of way. You want to dig into it because it seems important, maybe even a little bit fun to kind of put it that way. Right? You want to understand yourself better. You don't want to like self-flagellate yourself and be all self-critical and stuff like that. So that's a wrap for the question portion, the Q&A part. Thanks for sending in your stuff. If you have a question about a certain topic, just leave it in the comment below or email me at contact@maxjancar.com and I might include your question in a later episode. Anyhow, let's move on to the quote of the episode. Today's quote comes from, well, me, and it's about something I've found to be true not just in breakup recovery, but in life in general. The harder you chase happiness after a breakup, the faster it runs away from you. Ironically, it's only when you give yourself permission to be unhappy that happiness eventually finds its way back. So think about that for a moment, right? This isn't just about some random feel-good bullshit. It's the essence of the backwards law that we've been discussing throughout this episode. Your relentless pursuit of feeling better is precisely what is probably keeping you stuck in feeling worse. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it helpful, in fact, make sure you download that free breakup recovery cheat sheet that I mentioned in the beginning. It contains over 40 practical tips on breakup recovery. If you simply apply just like a third of them, you're probably going to feel better after this breakup. You're actually going to be better after this breakup. So if you want to grab that free resource, the link to it is in the description below this video, in the podcast description if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So I'm Max Jancar, and I'm gonna see you in the next episode. Take care.